The purpose of this video is to go over the appearance of several tissues as they would appear under the microscope. This is also to correlate with the worksheet used in the classroom, and I would like you to use this video as a way of going over your work on the worksheet. So please, before you start watching this video, I would ask you to attempt to identify as many of the tissues as you can on the worksheet. The worksheet looks like this. This is page 1 of the worksheet, and what I'll do in this video is I will spend some time going item by item through each of these, talking through what you should notice. I apologize for the fact that the handouts in class are black and white, but you can look at this file on the website to see it in full color, or you can just pause the video at this point and kind of refer back to this if you need hints from the actual color. I will be basically working down I'll start by working down the left-hand column first, and then I will work down the right-hand column. We'll flip the page and do the same thing on the back. For this first tissue, I'm asking you to focus your attention on the cells that you can see right here along the edge. They're kind of highlighted with blues and pinks. You can see 4 individual cells here. The fact that they are sitting next to a big empty lumen should give you the hint that these are, in fact, epithelial tissues. In terms of layers, it's pretty clear that there's only one layer of cells, so these would be simple. And in terms of shape, they would be squamous. Wow. Sorry about the handwriting. It's hard to write with the stylus on the iPad screen. Again, you're looking at a single layer of cells, and they are definitely squished, kind of flat. Once again, we see some cells here, this time highlighted in pink again. There's a large empty lumen in the middle, and if I pick just a cell or two to look at, this particular cell here has kind of a trapezoidal outline. I'm going to make that line thicker. Kind of a trapezoidal outline. This one here a little bit more boxy. Nucleuses inside each of these. Between the lumen and the connective tissue back here is a single layer of cells. There would be a basement membrane, approximately this location. So hopefully you're thinking that this is epithelial, that it is simple, and that it is cuboidal. Specifically what you're looking at here is the center of a gland, the lumen of a gland, and these cells would be secreting juice into that lumen. All right, if you take a look here, you're going to see nucleuses nicely lined up along here. And if you look around these nucleuses, you can kind of make out the outline of a particular cell, something like that. At the top, there are little fuzzies. Those fuzzies are referred to as cilia. There is a narrow lumen up here, barely visible, but it's there. So you should be thinking epithelial. You should be thinking simple. The reason I know it's simple and not pseudostratified is because the nucleuses are kind of nicely lined up for the most part. You got one little oddball here, but for the most part they're lined up nice and neat. These are columnar, and they're ciliated, so this is likely from the lining of an intestine or something like that. Just to add a few additional details, there would be a basement membrane right about here, and this would all be connective tissue. Looking at these cells, if we have a basement membrane way down here, kind of riding up and down, on top of that connective tissue, there are many layers of cells here, so these are definitely going to be stratified. It is epithelial. You can barely see the lumen up there at the top. And the cells, especially as you work closer to the surface, are definitely squamous. This is stratified squamous. This is actually a sample of skin. And what typically happens is at the bottom they're kind of cuboidal in shape, but as you work your way up, the cells get basically flatter and flatter as you work your way to the surface. typical squamous, stratified squamous. A couple things to notice here. We can see cilia on the top in a lumen, so this has got to be epithelial. The nucleuses are jumbled up all over the place, and the cells appear to be tall and narrow. So this is definitely columnar in shape, but it is going to be pseudostratified. And the reason it's pseudostratified versus simple is because you can see the nucleuses are not lined up in a row. They're kind of all over the place. In some places it looks like there's more than one cell piled up, and in other places it looks like it's just one cell passing through from top to bottom. This is typical of the respiratory tract. Once again, there'd be a basement membrane down in this area, and this would all be connective tissue at the bottom. This one is really tricky. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that this is epithelial, which you can tell because there is a lumen. Its layer, it's definitely stratified. Its shape word, this is the one that changes shape. This is transitional. Now there's really no way I would expect you to notice that on its own, but it's transitional epithelium. What I want you to think about right now is whether this is stretched or relaxed. And as you look at this, I take a look at some of these cells along the surface and even just a layer or two in. Do they appear stretched out and thinned, or do they appear round and relaxed? Hopefully you're landing on relaxed transitional. A major giveaway here is the term matrix. I'm giving you the hint that there is matrix to be seen here, and what it is you're actually looking at in this particular image are a bunch of fat cells. So each of these cells would be filled with fat, and in between them you see this blue stuff, and the blue stuff is protein fiber. And there are protein fibers then separating each of these cells from each other. So the matrix type would be protein fiber. The category would be connective. That's a giveaway from the simple fact that there's a matrix. In specific name, this is called adipose, another name for fat. And the reason we can say it is a fat matrix is a protein fiber matrix is because there are proteins separating each of the cells from each other. Here, the individual protein fibers are showing up as pink and purple lines. Those would be strands of collagen, and occasionally some cells scattered within that collagen matrix. Once again, we are definitely talking about connective tissue. The presence of collagen, no indication of anything else, so we're going to say it's protein fiber, which I'll just abbreviate PF. Specific name, this is loose, also known as areolar. These are tissues where the protein fibers are very, very spread out, where there's room in between for other stuff, and you can see here that there are other cells kind of randomly scattered within that loose arrangement of cells. This one's tricky to look at. What you see between each of the cells is nothing, and what it would actually be there if this were a living sample would be a fluid. This is something with a fluid matrix, and the only thing we've really talked about as having a fluid matrix would be blood. Because it's a fluid matrix, you expect the matrix in here to just be kind of clear, especially under a microscope. In actual blood plasma, if you separate the cells from the plasma itself actually has a hint of a yellow tint to it. One of the ways I can tell that these are blood cells versus something else is the fact that the cells all have this kind of donut hole-y type thing. That hole doesn't go all the way through, but the cells are what are called biconcave. If we look at the cell in cross-section, the cell, it'd almost be like taking a piece of Play-Doh and squeezing it in top and bottom, and you can see that kind of reflecting the light uniquely in the center of each of those cells. The other giveaway is the clear invisible matrix, which would be fluid. Here again, we're seeing tons of protein fibers. this case, the protein fibers, let me switch to blue, the protein fibers are all going back and forth like this. We can see the occasional cell, which I'll outline in green. It's definitely a protein fiber matrix, still connective tissue, and hopefully you're thinking that this is dense. We saw a loose one earlier. This is dense, and because they're all going back and forth the same way, it is dense regular. This isn't the prettiest example of this stuff you'd ever see, but all of the pink, once again in here, all this pink stuff, which I'm now covering in blue, that's all collagen. And here, it's going every which direction. Some of it's going up and down, some of it's going left and right. It's just a big tangled mass of collagen fibers going every which way. So we're certainly talking about connective tissue, protein fiber matrix. The specific name of this would be dense, but because they're going every which way, they are irregular. This would be what you'd see in the fuzzy chunk of leather. If you look at the backside of leather where it's all fuzzy and stringy, you just have a tangled up mass of collagen going every which way. In this one, I'm going to go ahead and give you a hint that the pink material that you see all throughout here is very, very hard, yet it bends. Now there's definitely cells with a lot of matrix in between, so we're certainly looking at connective tissue. The fact that the pink stuff is hard, hopefully you get the idea that this is something that includes ground substance as well as protein fiber, a mixture of the two. We never have ground substance without protein fiber. Specifically, the hint here being that it bends, this is going to be cartilage. Specifically, this is hyaline cartilage, the kind of cartilage that you would find covering the ends of bones and such. I can tell that because there are no visible protein fibers down in through here. If there were visible protein fibers scribbling through here, I would probably call it elastic or fibrocartilage. For now, I'm just happy if you can get to the point where you know that it's cartilage as compared to bone or blood or something like that. At this point, we're flipping the page, so I'll work down the left side first, then the right side. 6 to go. All right, the arrow is pointing at the cell of concern here. The cell is kind of highlighted in blue. Hopefully you recognize this as a neuron, which makes it a type of nerve tissue. You can see what's called the soma of the cell here. There is a nucleus within that soma. This is an axon down here, and these are all dendrites. We can't see the terminals because they would be way down at the other end of that axon. All this pink fuzzy stuff is going to be a combination of glial cells and just the branching of the dendrites. You can branch out outrageously through that entire area. So neuron is what this is. And if I had to guess right now, I would say it is unmyelinated. I don't see any evidence of oligodendrocytes or Schwann cells along that axon. This is the exact same image, but here we're going to highlight different cells. Here I'm referring to these little cells that aren't the neuron. These little cells that are scattered around with neurons that are helpers to neurons are referred to as glial cells. They are part of the nerve tissue category. So glial cells is the type of cells, or any one of them can be called a glia. Difference between an adjective and a noun here. The glial cells are scattered all around as those little purple dots. They do not include the actual neuron. This one was probably really tricky to figure out looking at your black and white printout. You can see kind of a vertical streakiness. Let me switch colors. Vertical streakiness here, separating different cells from each other, or what we would call fibers. There are fibers going this direction and this direction. But what's most important here is the cleanliness of the image. It's very neat and orderly, and most specifically, you can see these horizontal stripes coming across the fibers. Those are referred to as striations, and that makes this muscle and more specifically it's called striated muscle, or we can also call it skeletal muscle. Striated because of the actual striation, skeletal because it's attached to the skeleton. This is muscle that is voluntary. You can choose to control it. This is the muscle that makes up your bicep, your tricep, your gluteus max. This is the same muscle that you also find on like a piece of steak or meat. All right, the thing to look at here, this is a sample of bone. Specific name would be bone, compact bone. It is a connective tissue. It has a ground substance / protein fiber matrix. The way you can tell it's bone is by this appearance that kind of reminds you of a target. You see blood vessels in various places. There'd be one just off the screen down here. You see blood vessels, but more significantly, surrounding these blood vessels, you see cells, what are called osteocytes, surrounding them, almost like a bullseye in places where people miss the bullseye. All the space in between there, in between here, is going to be your ground substance and protein fiber matrix with the cells scattered around. And when you see it arranged with these distinct ring-like things, so it looks like a log of a tree or a bullseye target kind of a thing, that is the giveaway that you're looking at compact bone every time. The hint here says that this is not epithelial tissue. If you were to think of this as a lumen, you might think of all of that as stratified squamous, but it's not epithelial, so it can't be that. This is in fact a type of muscle. And knowing that it's a muscle, if we outline any one cell, so here's a nucleus, and if we outline the cell around it, the cell is going to be long and narrow, something like that. There are no striations visible. There's nothing coming across this way. We don't see any of that. So that would make this specifically smooth muscle. And this is one other type of muscle. You're probably taking a stab at this being cardiac muscle on account of the fact that it's the only one we haven't looked at yet, and that would be true. Cardiac. The giveaway is the fact that we have striations. It's striated like skeletal muscle is striated, so is cardiac. But periodically we see these extra dark striations, and those extra dark ones are referred to as intercalated discs. What they actually are is the boundary between one cell and another. So you could draw the outline of a cell, something like this, and this would be a different cell down here. This cell has a nucleus, this cell has a nucleus, and the two cells come together at that particular intercalated disc. Cardiac cells are very similar to skeletal cells in the fact that they have the striations. They're similar to smooth muscle cells in the sense that each cell has its own nucleus. And compared to either, they are just messy. Occasionally the cells have like strange branching patterns to them where they can kind of branch left and right, and so on. It's just a mess, and if you think about it, if you tear a heart out of a chest, that would also be a mess. That covers the whole worksheet. Hopefully this was helpful. I would highly recommend watching this video again the night before the quiz on tissues. The tissue quiz will be a lab practical where you will identify microscopic images of all of these types of things. Have a good day.